Welcome back. In this module, we're going to talk about using information in lists. Now, if you'll remember, lists are one of the 6 core components of SharePoint, but they're one of only 2 components that actually hold data. So lists are actually really important. In this lesson, we're going to first define a list so that you know what it is that we're talking about when we say list. We'll talk about some common list types. We'll talk about how to manage list information and demonstrate exactly how to do just that. And finally, we'll talk about some content management tools that are available within lists and how to work within them. So a lot of really cool stuff to talk about with regards to lists in this module. Let's go ahead and get started. So what is a list? Well, it is without a doubt one of the most important and pervasive elements in a site. Remember, it's only one of 2 components that actually holds data here in SharePoint. It's generally flat in structure, so its fields are organized into columns with column headers, and records are organized into rows. If that structure sounds familiar, it's because it looks a lot like an Excel spreadsheet when it's in its native view. There are plenty of different types of lists. Think about all the types of lists that interact in your world. Maybe not necessarily work-related, but just lists in general. What lists can you think of? How about a task list or to-do list? How about a contact list? Many of us don't memorize phone numbers anymore. We have smartphones that do it for us. So we have a list of contacts that we pull from. An events list, also known as a calendar. After all, what is a calendar if not a list of upcoming events organized into a grid-based structure? There are plenty of other styles of lists as well, including purchase orders, product inventory, even the upcoming menu in the company cafeteria. All of these are types of lists. It's important to note that lists won't always look like you have in your head with an Excel spreadsheet structure. As we've seen, they can look like calendars. They can look like a ton of different things. The most important thing to remember about lists is less what they look like and more how they receive their data. If you'll remember, lists receive their data directly from you. So it's generally information that is being typed or inserted directly into SharePoint. So it's not based on a file, it's all about the data. In this next part of the lesson, we're going to talk about managing list information, and we'll demonstrate how to manage lists as well. We'll talk about creating, viewing, and editing list items. We'll also talk about deleting and restoring list items once they've been deleted. And finally, we'll talk about ribbon controls in the more traditional styles of list apps. We'll also talk about the new modern list design and where the new controls can be found. So let's go ahead and get started. To create a new item in a list, first things first, you've got to be in a list. Keep in mind you can get into lists in any number of different ways. But if you forget how, you can always go to the gear in the top right corner and find your existing lists in Site Contents. In this example, I'm inside a task list. Now there are a couple of different ways to identify that you're in a list. If you're in a traditional styled list or legacy list, you'll notice up at the top portion of the screen, the ribbon tab tools that are being made available to us, one of them says the word list. In this example, what I'd like to do is add a new task to this task list. Now, I can either click the New Task button, or I can go to the Task ribbon tab and click New Item. Either one of these will work. Keep in mind, this is the same button in 2 different places. So if I were to click on New Item here in the ribbon, you'll notice that it allows me to populate the task name, start and due date, even say who it's assigned to. And likewise, if I had gone ahead and clicked on New Task, you'll see it gives me the exact same field. Now, take stock of how we're giving this information to SharePoint. Are we uploading a file, or are we typing the data in directly? In this case, because the central data point of which we are adding this item to is textual, we're giving it directly to SharePoint, it's going into a list. Now, if we had uploaded a central file and that was the primary data point, that would have been within a library. Now, don't let the fact that you can attach a file to a list item confuse you from the fact that this is in fact a list. Attaching the file, this is not the central data point. This isn't what drives each new record in this list. It's what I type into this box that is driving the information in the app. Therefore, this is a list. So I'll go ahead and say, for the sake of argument, this task is going to be evaluate successes and challenges. So we'll go ahead and say that this is a meeting that we're going to schedule for February 9th. We'll also make it due that day as well. So again, take stock of how we're giving this information to a list. I can even go so far as to assign this task to somebody. Let's say I'm going to go ahead and assign it to my second in command, LT09. Now keep in mind, I can also click Show More. Depending on the app you're adding more information into, there might be more or less information that you can put in. I'll go ahead and leave these blank and click Save. And just like that, there it is. So I've now put Evaluate Successes and Challenges due February 9th, and I've added it to this list. So to recap, we added a new task or a new item to this list, either by clicking the New Item button at the top of this list here in the main screen, or by going to the Top Tasks tab and clicking New Item. The process would have been the same in any other style of list. You just wouldn't see the Tasks tab, it would say Items. Go ahead and take this opportunity to pause the video and try that for yourself. Add a new item to a list. To edit an existing item in a list, first things first, you've got to, of course, be in the list and identify the item you'd like to edit. So in this instance, I'd like to edit the item that says Call a Meeting with the Steering Committee. It's currently assigned to LT02. I need to assign it to LT04. And likewise, we can't do this today, so we're going to bump it to tomorrow. Either way, we need to make changes to this. There are a million different ways that you can edit something here in SharePoint. Well, not a million, but you get the idea. There's lots of different ways to do the exact same thing. The first way is, as you might have noticed, I just clicked on the actual item here in this list that says Call a Meeting with the Steering Committee. By clicking on the actual item, what it does is it takes you to a dedicated page that shows you all the available information in this list. It's here that you'll notice in the ribbon, I actually have the option to edit the item, this item. So that's one way. Another way would be to click on the button that says Edit this list up at the top portion of the screen. If you do choose to click Edit this list, also known as Quick Edit, which can be found here in the List tab underneath Quick Edit, same button, what this will do is it'll destabilize the page so that I can edit not just this particular item, but you'll notice that now all of the items that were available in this list now look like clickable cells. I can now edit every single item in this list, at least the visible fields for each item in this list. You'll notice, for example, Start Date isn't listed here, and therefore, using Quick Edit, I can't edit Start Date. Now keep in mind that if you are going to edit using Quick Edit, you've got to remember to click Stop Editing this list when you're done. If you don't do this, your changes will not save. It's a very common mistake that people make not to click Stop Editing this list when they're done using Quick Edit. The third way to edit this item would be to select the item using the check mark on the left-hand side. Now, if you take a look at the ribbon tabs that are available here, either the Tasks tab or the List tab, each of them contains specific tools. The Tasks tab, or Items tab, contains tools that allow us to manage specific tasks, individual items. You'll notice that if I didn't have an item selected, tools like View Item, Edit, Delete, Insert, Move Up or Down are all grayed out. We have a saying at Learnit, and that is you must select to effect. So in order to have access to item-specific tools, here in the Tasks tab, you must select an item or task to edit. And sure enough, you'll notice the option to edit item here. That's 3 ways. The fourth and final way to edit an item is to click on the ellipses, the ... to the right of any individualized item. At which point, you'll click on the second layer of ellipses and choose Edit Item. You can get this same pop-up by right-clicking as well, and you'll notice that Edit Item appears directly. So there's a ton of different ways to get to this. All of them, however, once selected, take you to the same view. This one. So I'll go ahead and update the start and due date to February 1st. And I'm going to change who it's assigned to LT04. And finally, I'll click Save either here or here. And just like that, I've edited the item. So to recap, there are a ton of different ways to edit an item. You can right-click on it and choose Edit, click on the ellipses and then the second ellipses and click Edit. Select the item using the check mark on the left-hand side, going to the Tasks tab and clicking Edit Item, or finally, actually clicking on the item and selecting Edit Item up in the top left-hand corner. All of those will allow you to edit an existing list item. Go ahead and pause the video and try editing an item in a list for yourself. So at this stage, we've talked about how to create, view more details on, and edit existing list items. What we'd like to do now is we've decided we don't actually need to evaluate successes and challenges. Now we could mark it as complete and just ignore it, but in this instance what we'd like to do is ideally just not have it on the list at all. So to delete an item that already exists on a list, there are a couple of different options at your disposal. The first is in the Tasks tab. You'll notice that we have Delete Item listed here. However, you'll also notice that Deleted Item is grayed out. Remember, you must select to effect. So I'm going to go ahead and take my cursor and select that item, and you'll notice that the entire Tasks tab lights up, where I can delete the item here. You can also delete the item by using the ellipses on the right-hand side and clicking on that second ellipses to delete the item as well. And finally, remember, even though this is the web, you can right-click on items and get that second layer of ellipses in one click. And now I can go ahead and click Delete Item. No matter how you delete the item, the process is the same. It'll give you a pop-up that says, hey, we're going to send this to the recycle bin. It also means that if there are any other items that are related to this, they will also go to the recycle bin. So I'll go ahead and say, sure, why not? Just like when you delete something on your computer, it goes to a central recycle bin repository where it can be retrieved up to 90 days later by default. Now keep in mind, your organization can customize that. So you'll want to check with your site administrator to make sure that it is 90 days for your organization as well. Go ahead and pause the video and delete your own item as well. Now, of course, keep in mind, we highly recommend deleting something that you don't actually need. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Now that we've deleted an item, it might be in our best interest to learn how to retrieve items we didn't mean to delete. So of course, we'll need to go to where that item went when we deleted it. Do you remember where it went? If you're guessing the recycle bin, you guessed right. To go to the recycle bin, remember you have two different options at your disposal. You'll either find it in your quick launch here on the far left-hand side, or you're going to find it in the gear up at the top right corner with inside Site Contents. Remember, Site Contents is the absolute guaranteed location where you can go to find information on all data and structure in a particular site. So I'll go ahead and click on Site Contents. And sure enough, there's the recycle bin. Now it's important to note the recycle bin only shows you files that you have deleted. If someone else has deleted this item, they're going to have to go into their recycle bin. Keep in mind that even site owners can't go into other users' recycle bins to retrieve content. That's something that only a site collection administrator has the authority to do. So in the event that somebody does delete something and no one knows who, you'll need to contact a site collection administrator to go into their site collection recycle bin in order to retrieve that particular item. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Recycle Bin here in the top right corner. And it'll take me into my recycle bin. In this instance, you'll notice again, I'm only seeing items that I've deleted. And sure enough, there's the list item that I deleted just a little bit ago. The item in the list evaluates successes and challenges. And I can even see here, it was listed in the project tasks list. So I'll go ahead and select that item to restore it. You'll notice that when I do select it, the button that previously said Empty Recycle Bin now says Delete, Restore. These are contextual tools. So you'll notice when nothing is selected, I get an option that allows me to manage the entire recycle bin. But when I select a specific item, I get item tools that are specific to just that selected object. If I click Delete, that item will be deleted completely. If I click Restore, it reverts it back to its previous instance. So I'll go ahead and click Restore. And just like that, it's been restored back to that tasks list. Now, what if I had deleted it? Or what if I've emptied the recycle bin? Well, you might think, well, I must be out of luck, right? Not entirely. You see, if you scroll down to the very bottom of your recycle bin, you'll also notice that there's an option for something called the second stage recycle bin. The second stage recycle bin will allow you to retrieve content that you may have accidentally deleted from your recycle bin. So it's your second chance to retrieve deleted content if you're foolish enough to empty your recycle bin the first time. Now, if you go into your recycle bin and then delete it from there, well, you get no sympathy from me. You've done this to yourself. To close things off, I'm going to go ahead and jump back into Site Contents. And I'm going to find my central tasks list. And sure enough, Evaluate Successes and Challenges is now back in this list. So to recap, we deleted an item, went to the recycle bin, selected the item, and restored it. And it brought it right back to its original location. Go ahead and pause the video and restore an item from your recycle bin. We'll see you after the break. It's time to talk content management. We've already talked about creating, viewing, and editing list items. We've also talked about the ability to delete and restore list items, all the while we've talked about the ability to utilize the existing ribbon controls. What we'd like to do now is talk about some content management tools that are available to be implemented by site owners and administrators. In this lesson, we're going to talk about content approval. We're also going to talk about the ability to access past versions of an item in a list. And finally, we'll talk about accessing and creating new views for lists. So a lot of really cool stuff to talk about here. We're still talking about lists, but keep in mind that some of these tools may or may not be utilized in your particular organization's lists. Let's go ahead and get started. In this lesson, we're going to talk about content approval and what it is and how to work with it. So right out of the gate, I'd like to point out we're in a different list than we were in a previous lesson. We're now in something called a discussion board. Now remember, there's only two components in all of SharePoint that actually hold data. Lists, which hold data directly, and libraries, which hold files that hold data. Now we are in a list, and there's a couple of different ways to identify that. Just as a reminder, if there is a ribbon, you might see it notified as a list tab, indicating that we're in a list because it provides list management tools. Now this is not a guaranteed way. The easiest way to identify whether or not something is a list or a library is to attempt to add a new item. So I'll go ahead and either click New Discussion, or if you'll remember from previous lessons, I can go to the Items tab and I can click on New Item here, if I should so choose. Multiple ways to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New Discussion. Now, of course, because this is a different list than the one I was working in previously, the questions are a little bit different. The types of information this list is trying to collect are a little different. That said, there's also something else a little different that you'll see at the top portion of the screen. Here in a yellow bar, it says, items on this list require content approval. Your submission will not appear in public views until approved by someone with proper rights. This particular list has a tool called Content Approval turned on. It's the ability for site owners to designate specific people to approve content, and until that content is approved, it's not visible to the public, or at least to those individuals who would normally have access to this library or to this list. So I'm going to go ahead and type a new subject. Discussion boards can be used for a lot of different cool things. In this example, we'll use the discussion board to highlight that I'm having a particular challenge. How do I submit the weekly report? I can't remember where to go. I'll go ahead and mark this as a question and click Save. Now, at first glance, it might look like I've posted it. But as we'll see in just a moment here, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the view of another user, and we'll see, sure enough, that no one can actually see this just yet because it's still pending. So here I am logged in as another user, this time LT04, as opposed to LT02 just a moment ago. You'll see I'm in the exact same discussion board, but I don't see anything. Why? Because that item that I just posted is still pending. When an item is still pending, the only people who can see pending items for approval are the author, the person who actually wrote the item or submitted the item, and those who have the ability to approve content. So in the previous example just a moment ago, I can see it, but that's because I wrote it. So let's go ahead and say, for the sake of argument, that someone approves it. To approve an item, if you do have permission to approve content, you have a couple of different options at your disposal. But what you can easily do is, in this instance, what I'll do is I will select the item. So we're going to go ahead and approve this item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump up to the List tab, and I'm going to change this view to the Moderated Approve Reject Items view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go change my view and approve this item. I'll go ahead and jump into the Management view. I'll go ahead and click on the ellipses. And what I'd like to do is approve this item. So I'll go ahead and hover over Advanced, and sure enough, there's Approve Reject. Now you can also select the item using the check mark on the left-hand side and go to the Items tab, and you'll see the option to Approve Reject here as well. Keep in mind that if you don't have approval permissions, you're not going to be able to choose this. Someone with the appropriate approval permission will have to do this for you. So I'll go ahead and approve this item and click OK. Now, all told, I haven't changed this item at all. All I've done is I've simply approved it. So let's come back to our LT04 account for just a moment here. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh the screen. Now that that item's been approved, you'll notice suddenly it's visible. It was only once the item was approved that it became publicly accessible by anyone who had access to this list. So go ahead and pause the video. Try this for yourself. Find a list that has content approval turned on and submit an item. Take stock that you'll need somebody who isn't you in order to see that your item isn't publicly visible until it's been approved. Go ahead and try that for yourself, and we'll see you after the break. The next content management tool we're going to talk about here is version control, or version history. The ability to track past versions of an item in a list is a key hallmark feature of SharePoint. The ability to say, okay, if someone does make a change, hold on to whatever it used to be, in case we don't like that change, or if we need to view past records to see how we got to where we are today. So here I am in another list. Now this is the third type of list that we've seen. This one is a simple list. Now you might notice some key differences between this style of list and other styles of lists that we've talked about in previous lessons. One of the biggest distinctions you're going to notice is that this one doesn't have a ribbon. There's no items tab or list tab. This is the new modern design that eventually all lists will have. The ribbon is on borrowed time. The ribbon will not always be available inside of SharePoint. So it's critical that we take a quick look, very briefly, at this new interface. So in this instance, again, you'll notice that I don't see my items or list tab. Instead, I have a collection of tools that I can find at the top portion of this list, including simple options like add a new item, quick edit, export to Excel, manage with Flow, a tool we'll talk about in later videos, and even the ability to access Power Apps, Alert Me, or manage existing alerts. So here in this new modern list, it's really stripped down. We're not seeing all the options all at once anymore. Instead, Microsoft is providing a curated short list of just the tools that it thinks we need. So let me go ahead and take a look at Submit a Question to the management team. You'll notice that when I select the item using the check mark on the left, the tools that are available up at the top have shifted to include Edit, Share, Get a Link, Delete, and if I click on the ellipses, more options, including Version History, Alert, and Manage My Alerts. These are the same options, however, that we would have seen if we had clicked on the ellipses to the right of that item. You'll notice Open, Edit, Share, Get a Link. You'll also notice some more contextual and advanced options that weren't available. For example, you'll notice that I have access to Details. You'll also notice I have access to Copy Field to Clipboard. So these are options that we're seeing in the ellipses, but not up at the top portion of the screen. Keep in mind that that ellipses menu that we just saw is the same menu that we would have seen if we had right-clicked on this item as well. So keep in mind that right-click is a contextually powerful tool, no matter whether you're in the modern or classic list interface. So we've already seen the option to view version history in a couple of different areas. In this case, I'll go ahead and choose version history from the top bar. Sure enough, you'll see here it is. The original entry was shouting into the abyss. Someone updated it to submit a question to the management team. Now, of course, in both instances, you'll see that it was me, LT02, that made those changes. But version history is incredibly useful in that it helps us to identify not just what changes were made and when they were made, but who made them. So let's say for the sake of argument, I want to revert it back to shouting into the abyss. To view more information about this item, you can click directly on the timestamp. That's a link. So if I click on that, it'll take me into a full page that is just that item, so I can review it. But if I know that this is the one I want to revert back to, simply click the drop-down arrow to the right of that timestamp and click Restore. And I'll click OK. Now before I click OK, what do you think is going to happen to version 1.0 in relation to 2.0? Is it just going to switch the order? Is it going to remove 2.0 and replace it with version 1.0? Or is it going to do something different? Let's go ahead and click OK and find out. If you guessed it's going to duplicate version 1.0 and make it version 3.0, you would be correct. You see, it's not going to remove past versions, even if it's not a version that we wanted made in the first place. It's important that it tracks all past versions for the sake of maintaining an absolute archive of this item in its history. So to recap, to revert back to past versions of an item, simply find the item, either by selecting it using the check mark, clicking on the ellipses, or right-clicking on it. Go to Version History. Find the item you'd like to revert back to, hover over the timestamp and click the drop-down arrow to the right, and click Restore and Confirm. And just like that, you've used Version History to manage your list. And you've gotten a quick tour of the new modern list interface here in SharePoint. Go ahead and pause the video and try out Version History for yourself. The last section we'll talk about with regards to lists is the ability to customize your view. Now we've seen that there are two different ways that lists can be laid out. We have the classic interface that has the ribbon tabs up at the top, and we had the new modern interface, which does not have ribbons, and instead has contextual tools that line the top portion of the screen. So we'll be talking about how to create views for both of them in two separate videos. First, let's talk about creating views here in the classic interface. Down towards the underneath portion, underneath New Task or Edit This List, you'll notice I've got all task, calendar, completed. These are views. And they're not all the views. If I click on the ellipses to the right here, it'll in fact reveal even more views, like Gantt or Late or My Tasks for that matter. But you'll also notice I have the option to modify this current view or create an entirely new one. Now, unless you're a site owner or someone that has edit capabilities for an entire site, you're probably not going to be able to modify any of these public views, meaning views that are accessible by all users. So instead, you'll be limited to just Create View, which you can click here or from the List tab up at the top portion of the screen. And sure enough, we'll see the option to modify and create views. Now bear in mind, even if you are a site owner or site administrator, I highly recommend avoiding modifying existing views until you get some working experience with this. Modifying views doesn't just modify it for you, it modifies it for all users that have access to this list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click Create View. Now when you first click Create View, it'll ask you what type: standard, calendar, datasheet, Gantt. It'll even give you the option to create a custom view using SharePoint Designer. We're not going to get into SharePoint Designer at any point throughout these videos. You'll have to check out our SharePoint 103 to get a brief taste of SharePoint Designer. Most views are based foundationally in the standard view, although it's important to note you're not limited to the standard view. Regardless of which view type, if you have an existing view that is almost perfect, meaning that a view that you've got that is already available is like, oh, it would be perfect if I could make one little change, you can use that view as a starting point, a template for your new view. In this example, I'm going to create a standard view. I'll go ahead and give it a name, and I'm going to call this the LT04 task view. So you can guess, I'm probably going to create a view that shows me just tasks assigned to LT04. Now, if you're a site owner, you'll also have the option to make this the default view. Once again, I'd like to remind you that you're not just changing the default view for you, you're changing it for all users. View audience. If you're not a site owner or administrator, you're not going to be able to create a public view, a view that's available to be used by anyone who accesses this list. Instead, you'll be limited to just creating a personal view. A personal view is only a view that exists for you. Now, keep in mind that even site owners and administrators will create their own personal views based on their specific job role. So keep in mind that you're not limited to just one or the other. You can use a mix of both if you have access to both. Personal views are generally for those views that only you would find valuable, and public views would be for those who did find value or could find value in those styles of view. If I scroll down a little bit here to the columns section, you'll notice that there's a ton of column names or metadata. The check marks indicate what is and is not visible. So we'll say for the sake of argument, I don't care when it's due. I don't care about any of this other information. I care about whether it's completed, what the name of the task is, who it's assigned to, and for the sake of argument, let's say that I also care about what version number it's currently on. Now, in order to order it, you'll use the drop-downs here on the right-hand side. So you might say, for example, that you want assigned to be the last field visible. So where it says version, all I'm going to do is make sure that version's number is less than assigned to. So I'll go ahead and click on version, and I'm going to mark it to 3. And you'll see now, it is definitely coming before assigned to. So I'll go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Just as a quick side note, you're not limited to any number of different fields of metadata to make visible, but keep in mind that you want to make sure that this information is readable. From here, you get to designate the sort. So I'll go ahead and say sort by, here we go, due date. So even though due date isn't a field that's going to be visible, I can still sort by it. And I'll go ahead and sort in ascending order. Keep in mind that I could sort by other fields if I wanted to, much in the same way that you would sort by last name instead of first name. Next, I have the option to filter. Now keep in mind, you do not have to filter. In fact, most views don't filter. But if you were to filter, all you'd have to do is say, instead of show all items in this view, which is the default, I want to show items only when the following is true. Show items when column assigned to is equal to LT04. Or I could even go so far as to add an or an and, where in the event that it doesn't say LT04 in the assigned to, if it say contains LT04 in the name, then list that as well. I won't go so far, but nonetheless, keep in mind that you do have access to this as well. Now, when creating your view, there are a ton of options at your disposal that we're not going to drill into here. But nonetheless, I highly encourage you to check out some of these additional options when creating a view. In this instance, however, I've named it. I've decided that it will be a personal view, meaning for me only. I've chosen the metadata that I'd like to reveal and set it in the appropriate order. I've sorted it. I've filtered it. And finally, I'm going to click OK. And there you go. I'm now instantly dropped into the LT04 task view. Now, of course, I can go back to all tasks and it will reveal everything that's in this list. But if I only need to see what's inside the task view, there it is. So now I'm only seeing tasks assigned to LT04. So to recap, to create a new view, either click on the ellipses to the right of all the other views and click Create, or go to the List tab and select Create View from there. Name it, designate which fields you'd like to be visible, sort it, if you do choose to filter it, and then submit. Go ahead and pause the video and create your own personal view. A reminder, personal views are for views that only you would find valuable. Public views are useful for those that will have access to it outside of just yourself. We'll see you after the break. To create a view in the new modern list interface here in SharePoint Online, the process is going to look a little bit different. For example, you'll notice that we no longer have the ribbon where we would go to choose Create View. And likewise, we don't see any option to click an ellipses and select Modify or Create View. Instead, all of our options for views are here on the right-hand side. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and click on the All Items dropdown. You'll see I don't see Create View or even Modify View. I do see, however, Edit Current View. So I'll go ahead and do that. Does this interface look familiar? It should. This is the same interface that we just saw when we were creating our custom view in the classic list interface. So once again, I can go ahead and say, all right, well, I want to see who created this and what version it is. But I want version to come right after the title, followed by created by. I might even like to see when it was last modified. I'll go ahead and sort based on, not ID, but let's go ahead and do it alphabetically, based on title. This time, I won't choose to filter it, although we've seen that you could. And once again, we have these additional fields. Feel free to explore them. But what we're going to do is click OK. So what I've done in this particular instance is I've chosen to modify the view. So I actually did edit the public-facing view. Bear in mind that if you're not a site administrator, you might not have had that option. So I want to make sure that I point out beyond that what you can do is you can actually sort, filter, and group, and then choose to save that view as a personal view. So the same option that we had to create existing views for just ourselves is available. It's just not as readily obvious. Now, beyond that, let's say that I'd like to create a new view, not just edit an existing one. Using the plus sign here on the far right-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and choose Show Hide Columns. So let's say I'd like to show a view that is just the title and who created it. So I've gone ahead and deselected all those different items except for the fields that I wanted to see, and I'll click Apply. Now that I've done that, I'd also like to go so far as to filter, let's say, tough choices here. I'll go ahead and filter to say I just want to see items that say one particular entry. You'll notice that all items has a little asterisk by it. This indicates that I've edited the current view. So if I like this view and I want to hold on to it, but I don't want to replace the all items view, I'll simply click Save View. And I'll call this the SOP view. Keep in mind that if you're not a site admin, you will not have access to this check mark. But if you do have access to it, checking it makes it a public view, unchecking it leaves it as a personal or private view. And I'll go ahead and click Save. And finally, I'll click the dropdown, and sure enough, you'll notice I now have the All Items view and the SOP view. And if I should so choose, if I'm a site owner or site admin, I can even set this current view as the default. So to recap, two different interfaces for lists now. The classic interface that has the tabs, the modern interface that does not. In the grand scheme of things, the processes are the same, they just have slightly different looks and feels. Go ahead and pause the video and try creating your own view in a modern list. As a quick reminder, you can customize which columns are visible and which are not by clicking on the plus icon and selecting Show Hide Columns. Once you've chosen the metadata you'd like to appear, click Apply. And finally, once you've customized, sorted, and filtered to your exact specifications, remember to save the view and designate either public view or personal. Go ahead and try that for yourself, and we'll see you after the break. We're going to talk about using documents in libraries. So in this particular section, we're going to define a library for you. In our previous module, we talked about what lists were, one of the two core components that store data in SharePoint. We're finally going to talk about the second core component. From there, we'll talk about some common library types that are available in SharePoint. We'll talk about how to manage library documents. And finally, we'll talk about content management tools and how they interact with files that we're working with in a library. So let's get started. Defining a library. So libraries are a key repository where we store and manage Office documents and other files. It's important to note that libraries can hold any type of file they're not limited to just Office documents. They can hold pictures, music, video files, PDFs. Keep in mind that additional metadata can also be stored in relationship to the files. Metadata is simply data about data. Anything that gives us more information about a file can be considered metadata. The name of a file, how big it is, who uploaded it, when was it uploaded, who created it. These are all metadata fields, and we can create even more metadata fields in order to add even more context to why that file matters. It also provides powerful collaboration tools and document management tools to help us facilitate and manage day-to-day operations with regards to these files. So there's a ton of cool stuff that can be done with files, but the key thing to centralize on is that it has a clear file-based focus. There are a ton of different types of libraries. Bear in mind that libraries are not nearly as pervasive as lists, but nonetheless, they definitely do still play a substantive role in how we use SharePoint. So let's take the easy one off the table, document libraries. Keep in mind that a document library isn't restricting you to Word documents or any sort of textual-based document. In SharePoint, document simply means file. So it can hold any type of file that's allowed by your system admin. So that can be pictures, PowerPoint slideshows, music, MP3s, MP4s, PDFs, TXT. You get the idea. How about a picture library? So let's say for the sake of argument, we have a company picnic and we want to create a centralized repository where everybody can upload their photos that they took at the company picnic. A picture library is generally restricted to just pictures, but it's also designed in such a way that it presents pictures in a way that's far more appropriate for that style of file. A site assets library. Every site has a site assets library, which is designed to hold images and multimedia that we present on the site. So for site admins and site owners, this is the library that you'll use to upload graphics that you'll display elsewhere on the site. It's also where you'll go to upload the latest promotional video. So instead of referencing it from another site and not having total control over it, we can upload it to our own SharePoint site and host it there using the site assets library. Even a slide library allows you to store slides that can be inserted directly into PowerPoint presentations. So let's say this PowerPoint, for example, that I'm giving in today's class. I could easily upload this PowerPoint into a SharePoint library and have it set up so that if you should so choose, you could actually selectively decide which of these slides you'd like to download, as opposed to downloading the entire file and then deleting the ones you don't want. These are just some types of libraries, and they're by no stretch of the imagination the only types of libraries. But if there's anything that unifies the concept of libraries, it's that it is file-based. It's not about text, it's about the files themselves. They can contain whatever data we need them to, but they are contained in some way, shape, or form. In this section, we're going to talk about managing document libraries. We'll talk about creating and uploading Office documents and other files. We'll talk about deleting and restoring those files. We'll talk about managing those documents' metadata and how we can create new metadata if we should so choose. We'll talk about changing libraries' views and creating our own. We'll discuss checking in and checking out a document and the merits of why each matters. We'll talk about managing document versions. And finally, we'll talk about using folders and why they can be useful, and for those of you that don't like folders, how we can still work with them without having to see them. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back. So it's time to start talking about working with files, documents, here in SharePoint. It's often considered that working with files and uploading documents is one of the primary focuses of SharePoint. But as we've seen in past lessons here, lists do have a pervasive element to them. Documents may be the more obvious use case of SharePoint, but they are by no means the only use case. Nonetheless, they play an important role, so it's important that we know how to work with them. So here we are. Now in this stage here, I'm currently inside of a library. To upload a document that already exists to a library, you have a couple of options at your disposal. The first is to find the upload button at the top portion of the screen and give it a click. You'll notice that you'll have the option to upload an entire folder of files, or if it's just one or two files, then you'll be able to choose from files as well. Now when you do choose files, of course it gives you this little pop-up and allows you to search for the files that you need to upload. In this case, I'd like to go ahead and upload this Excel spreadsheet, although it's important to note that if you hold the Control key or the Shift key, you can select as many of these files at an instance as you'd like. In this case, I'll go ahead and choose just the one and click Open. And just like that, the file's been uploaded. So with the file uploaded here, it's important to note that it is now instantly accessible to anybody who wants access to this particular library. Now that said, that's not the only way that we can upload an existing file. You also have the option, in this case here, I'll go ahead and find another file. We'll go ahead and rename this here. So let's say in this instance, I have a PowerPoint that I'd like to upload to this library. Simply find it on your computer and click and drag somewhere into the web browser. You'll notice that as you drag it from your File Explorer view into the web, the words drag the items to any location appears at the top. Now you can either drop it directly into a folder. You'll notice that as I hover over the folder, it actually highlights. But if I drop it anywhere else, it'll simply upload. In this case, I'll go ahead and drop it anywhere except the folder. Once again, you'll notice that it's uploading. And there it is. So the file was easily uploaded. Now, in the event that I did intend to upload it into that folder, I can easily drag and drop it into that folder at a moment's notice. So by no stretch of the imagination am I limited to just that particular action. Once it's uploaded, I still have a lot of flexibility. Go ahead and pause the video and upload your own file into a library. It doesn't have to be any special file, and it doesn't have to be an Office document either. Keep in mind that you can upload any style of file. Pictures, music, videos, PDFs. It doesn't have to be Office documents. Go ahead and give that a shot, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back. So at this stage here, we've seen how easy it is to upload existing files into a SharePoint library. We could have either used the upload button here at the top portion of the screen. We could have also just dragged and dropped pretty much anywhere here in this library. But what if I want to create a file that doesn't already exist? Well, I can do that. In this instance, maybe I'd like to create a Word document that I can then collaborate on with my other team members. To create a new file, first things first, you'll need to be in a library. From here, I'll go ahead and click on New up at the top portion of the screen. You'll notice it's here I can create a new folder, a new Word document, Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint, OneNote. I can even create a hyperlink that exists as a file, a shortcut to another site, whether it's inside of SharePoint or out on the greater web. In this example, I'll go ahead and create a new Word document. So there you go. Just like that, I've created a new Word document and it's dropped me right into a blank Word document. Now, of course, if you take a really good look, we're not actually in Microsoft Word. Take a look up at the top portion of the screen. That's a URL. We're still inside a web browser. We're currently using a tool called Word Online. So think of this as Microsoft's very own Google Docs. Microsoft has their own web-based versions of Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, even OneNote. So you can actually create Word documents, manage spreadsheets, and even facilitate PowerPoint presentations in the web, even on computers that don't have Microsoft Office installed on them. Now, I'm by no means limited to Word Online. I can choose to edit in the desktop version of Word whenever I want. But in this instance, I'll go ahead and use Word Online. I'll give this an important collaborative title. And I'll go ahead and generate a little bit of gibberish text. Anybody speak Latin? No? What are they teaching in schools these days? Now, of course, I never titled this document, but I can always rename it whenever I want by clicking on the Word document. If you've never used Word Online or Excel or PowerPoint Online, give it a shot. It's pretty cool, and for the most part, pretty full-featured as well. So I'll go ahead and call this one Post-Meeting Follow-Up. While you might have noticed that there's an undo and redo button, one button that you're sure not to see is a save button. There doesn't seem to be a save button anywhere. So you might think, oh, well, it's in the File tab. I see Save As. I don't see Save. And in fact, if I click on Save As, you'll notice it even says to yourself, where's the Save button? So there is no Save button. Why? Because every change you make is being saved automatically. Pretty cool. So every single time I make a change here, like for example, highlighting a paragraph or two and giving it a little bit of pizzazz, is being saved instantly. Now, of course, I can also share it with other people as I go throughout this here. There's a ton of tools that are available here right out of the gate. Now, if you don't know where particular tools are, you also have access to the Tell Me bar. So let's say, for example, I want to insert a picture. There it is, insert picture. I can upload an existing picture if I should so choose. I could have also inserted a picture from online, utilizing Bing Images. In this case, I'll go ahead and keep it as is, and I'd like to go back to my library. To get back to your library, you'll utilize the name of your site up in the top left-hand corner. If you're in Word Online, Excel Online, or PowerPoint Online, to get back to the library you came from when editing or creating a file, click on the name of the site. For the love of everything, do not use the back button. SharePoint, as you will quickly find out, does not love the back button. So it's important to know where to go, where to click in these regards. So I'll go ahead and click on Project Central. And sure enough, I am back inside my project library, and there is the post-meeting follow-up document that I just created. Go ahead and pause the video and create your own new file here inside of SharePoint Online. To recap, simply click the New dropdown, choose the type of file, and go at it. We'll see you back after the break. Creating files and uploading files in SharePoint are critical tools in our arsenal of working inside SharePoint. But it's also important to know once a file is in SharePoint, whether you uploaded it or not, how do you work with that file? How do you edit it, for example? Well, that's where I come in once again. To edit a file that's already been uploaded into SharePoint, there's a couple of things you'll need to keep in mind. But the first is simply find the file you'd like to edit. So let's say for the sake of argument here, I'd like to go ahead and edit the fiscal year 2016 results. There's a couple of different ways to edit this file. If you haven't already figured it out, you can right-click on these files too. And you'll see the option to either open in Excel Online or open in Excel in the desktop. So right-click is an option. You'll also see that you can use the ellipses and get the exact same options. You can also select the file, click open, and hey look, the exact same options. So there's a ton of different ways to do the exact same thing, but if all else fails you, simply click on the name of the file, and it'll open it up directly in Excel Online. So here I am in Excel Online. You'll notice, however, if I try to start typing, it won't let me do anything. Why? Because I'm currently in a read-only view. When you click on the name of a file, it puts you into a web-based version of that application that can read it, but it's a read-only version. So to edit this document, I'll now have to click on Edit Workbook, at which point I can choose once again to either edit in the desktop version of Excel or Excel Online. I'll go ahead and edit in the browser. Once again, Excel Online loads up, and sure enough, this looks a lot like Excel. Now, unlike Microsoft Word Online, Excel Online isn't as full-featured. So there are some things that you can't do in the web that you can do in the desktop. So for example, for those of you that use macros, macros don't live in the web at all. You will have to edit in the desktop. But otherwise, if you're just making some moderate changes to values in a cell or quick changes to simple functions and formulas, you're going to have a grand old time here. So in this instance, I'll go ahead and make some quick changes, like I'll go ahead and find who is the sales lead. I'll add a bit of formatting here. I'll go ahead and say the sales lead is me, Sean B. And we'll populate that all the way down. Super easy. We'll go ahead and leave that at that. Now, once again, I'd like to go ahead and point out that there is no save button. Once again, if I click on the File tab, I see Save As. I don't see Save. All changes in Excel are made as soon as you leave the cell. So everything is being saved instantly. So you'll see here the process of editing existing files is almost identical to creating new files. The only difference is there's existing data versus not. To get back, simply click on the site name here in the top left-hand corner. And just like that, all the changes are saved. So to recap, to edit an existing file, right-click, open, choose whether you'd like to work online or in the desktop. I get a lot of questions about whether there's a better option, whether it's the desktop or online. It's entirely dependent on you. We're not taking away the desktop tool. And likewise, we're not saying you can't use online. Each one meets a specific need. If you're making quick changes and you don't want to go through the whole process of opening it up in the desktop, make those changes online. If you need access to the full features of the desktop application, go for it. Edit in the desktop. There's not a better or worse. And you'll find for yourself which ones make the most sense for you as time goes on. Go ahead and pause the video and edit an existing file here in SharePoint Online. No different than when we were working in lists. Creating items, editing existing items isn't hard. It's just procedural. It's knowing where the buttons are. That said, however, we did see that there were some processes that looked and felt a little bit different in libraries as opposed to lists. For example, uploading isn't something that we necessarily do inside of lists. That said, we'd like to take it one step further to start to talk about something we didn't mention in lists, but nonetheless would retroactively apply to lists as well. The ability to manage records metadata. So you might have noticed here on the far right-hand side, we have a column that hasn't been populated. Related project. This is metadata. Just as a quick refresher for those of you that missed the earlier videos, metadata is simply data about data. Anything that gives us more information about a file or item is metadata. So a file name, when it was modified, who uploaded it, who most recently edited it, what version of this document are we looking at? These are all metadata fields. But metadata can also be specific to a team, project, or organization. In this case, I have a column called Related Project. So I'd like to be able to say that the annual budget review is related to Project Red, for example. To edit existing file metadata, you've got a couple of options at your disposal, as we have with almost everything we've done. The first, and perhaps easiest, is if you already have the metadata field here that you'd like to be able to edit. So if the current view has the field you want to edit, you can use the Quick Edit tool. Now this is the same style of Quick Edit tool that we saw when we were working with lists. Simply click on Quick Edit and you'll notice that the entire library has broken down into what look like little individualized cells. So now I can click in the related project. There's a drop-down list, and I can choose the appropriate project. Not bad. So I'll go ahead and say the important folder is related to Project Blue, the annual budget, Project Red. You'll notice with each change that I make in Quick Edit, a little pencil appears, indicating that the record is being updated. The minute I leave that row, the pencil disappears, indicating that the change has been saved. When you're done, simply click Done. And there you go. I've now updated the related project. But you can also add metadata that doesn't already exist. Now keep in mind that the average end user might not be able to do this. Your site admins and site owners might restrict your ability to create new metadata. But if you do have the ability to create new metadata, you'll simply click the plus icon here on the far right-hand side and choose what type of metadata will it be. Will it be a text field where you're just going to type in? Will it be a paragraph field where people will put notes? Is it going to be a number? Would you like to choose that person from your Active Directory? Will it be a date? You can even go so far as to do what we've done here and create a choice list. So keep in mind that you're not limited to just the metadata that already exists. You can also create your own. Just as a quick side note, not only were we able to use Quick Edit to edit that existing metadata, you could have also right-clicked on the file and chosen not open, because remember, that would edit the file. But instead, if I go to more, I can edit the properties, including related project if I choose to edit. So sure enough, there's related project. I'll choose Project Green, click Save. And there you go. I'll use my breadcrumb trail to get back to Central Documents. Voila. So there you go. 2 different ways to edit the existing metadata of a file or folder for that matter. We could have used Quick Edit. We could have used the right click and gone to More. Remember, the right click is the same menu that you would have seen if you had clicked on the ellipses and gone to More. 2 different ways to edit existing metadata. Quick Edit, right click, More, Properties. Keep in mind that the right click menu that we see here is the same menu that we would have seen by clicking on the ellipses, going to More, and choosing Properties. Go ahead and pause the video and either create your own metadata and update it, or edit existing metadata that already exists. We'll see you after the break. When you upload a file to a SharePoint library, one of the things that you're doing that's different than emailing a document or putting that file in a shared network drive is that specifically, you are surrendering ownership of that file. You're essentially saying that whomever has the same permissions that I do in a given library will have just as much access to this file as I will. It's important to note that SharePoint is for collaboration. It's for putting something in a central location through which anybody can access that file that has the appropriate permissions, edit that file with the appropriate permissions, and so on. That said, inevitably, someone will make a change that you don't necessarily agree with. So let's come back to this fiscal year 2016 results, for example. I'll go ahead and make some quick changes in the web. And what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and select everything, or at least a good amount of it, and I'll clear it. Oops. So I just deleted a whole bunch of that. And I'll go ahead and insert a chart. There you go. So I've done damage to this file. Remember, when you upload a document to a library, everybody has access to it. At least everybody that has the appropriate permissions has access to it. So while that's also a good thing because of real-time collaboration and the ability for us to see all changes simultaneously, it also means that occasionally people will gain access to a file that we may not necessarily want to have access to a file, and they might make changes we don't agree with. So I've made some changes here, and of course keep in mind that all changes are saved instantly. So I'm going to go ahead and click back on the name Project Central to get back to my documents library. Bear in mind that all changes were saved instantly. So you might imagine that someone would be pretty upset if they found out that I had done that. Fortunately, keep in mind that just like in lists, we have access to version history of files. To access the past version history of a file in a library, simply find the file, select it, and click the ellipses up at the top portion of the toolbar. If version history is turned on, and keep in mind it is a feature that must be turned on in order to have access to it, you'll see the option Version History. Bear in mind that you can also access version history by right-clicking on the file or by clicking on the ellipses. Same options. So I'll go ahead and click on version history. And fortunately for us, those changes that I just made a moment ago, well, while they are still changes that exist, they're changes that can be easily reversed by reverting back to a past version of that file. Simply click on the drop-down arrow next to the timestamp and select Restore and confirm. And just like that, if I were to click on FY16, you'll see that all those changes have been undone. I have reverted back to a past version of that file. So version history, an incredibly valuable tool that will only continue to show its value as we get more and more collaborative in our day-to-day work environments. So to recap, to access past versions of a file, simply find the file, right-click, and select Version History. You'll notice here that versions also track metadata updates. Go ahead and pause the video and check out the past versions of files you've worked with. We'll see you after the break. Having just come away from the version history conversation, we often find people are a little spooked by this idea that, well, if I upload something to a library, that means anybody can edit it, or at least anybody that has access to this library. But nonetheless, that's a lot of people potentially. So what if I don't want other people to be able to edit this file? What if I only want to be the one to edit a file, at least while I'm working on it? For example, I may not want other people to try and edit a file at the same time that I am. Now, it's important to note that in 2017, Microsoft has all but eliminated some of the biggest challenges that come with multiple people being inside of a file. In fact, if you have the latest versions of Microsoft Office 365 or Office 2016, you already have access to what's called real-time collaboration, meaning that if multiple people are inside of a file, you'll actually be notified, and in some of the newer versions of SharePoint, you'll actually see those changes taking place in real time. So there's never a chance of two people working in the same place simultaneously. And if there were, each of you would see the other's changes instantly. But that said, there may be times where you don't want anybody to be inside of a file while you're working on it. And for those instances, we have a tool called Checkout. So, what is Checkout? Why does it matter? Well, as you'll see, if a document is not checked out, you only have exclusive rights to edit the file when you're in the full Microsoft Office application, and more importantly, only while the file is opened. You will not have exclusive rights to edit that file if you're using any of the Microsoft Office online web apps. So if you're using Word Online, Excel Online, PowerPoint Online, if a file is not checked out, anybody else can also go in and edit that file while you're in it. Now keep in mind, once again, you will see those changes in real time, but nonetheless, that does mean that other people can edit that file with you. When you do save changes, those changes are immediately synchronized with SharePoint and published. meaning that others will see any work in progress that you might not have been ready to show. So these are all things that happen when a file is not checked out. Now keep in mind, these aren't bad things. They're just things to be aware of. For example, you might want to collaborate with somebody. You might want, when you click save, for all those changes to be instantly visible. But if you don't, then you'll want to be aware of checkout. When a document is checked out, you have exclusive rights to edit that file both online and using the desktop apps. For as long as that file is checked out, you will continue to have exclusive rights. There is no time limitation on how long a file can be checked out. So if you're going to take 7 days to update a file, and you want to be able to just in one motion publish all your changes, you might consider checking it out. Likewise, if you don't want others to work in this file with you simultaneously, or to be able to edit it at all while it's quote unquote in progress, you might want to consider checking it out. When a file is checked out, when you save changes, those changes are not synchronized with SharePoint. So others won't be able to see your work in progress. The only person who will be able to see your work in progress is you until you check in that file. So let's talk about how to check out a file. To check out a file, like let's say here, the annual budget review, first, select the file. By now you should have figured out that when you do select a file, your contextual tools appear up at the top portion of the screen. From there, click the ellipses, and you'll see the option to, if a file is already checked in, to check out a file. This file has now been checked out, meaning that I have exclusive editing rights to this file. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, when a file is checked out, it doesn't keep track of versions while a file is checked out. So any changes that you make are all being saved under a single version update. So right now, for example, this file is currently version 3.0. So this checked out iteration of this file, version 3.0, it will continue to be version 3.0 for as long as it is checked out, no matter how many times I save it. And it's only once I check it back in that all the changes will be published and it will become version 4.0. Now, when a file is checked out, you'll notice that the icon itself actually has a little bit of a change. There's a little green arrow in the bottom right corner of the icon. That indicates that a file is checked out. You'll also notice that there are a couple of other files that are checked out. Now, a file can also be checked out forcibly by SharePoint if it's missing information. So keep in mind, if you've ever uploaded a file before and it just instantly checked itself out, it's usually because it's missing some information. If you're not sure whether somebody's checked it out or if it's missing information, simply hover over the green icon and it'll tell you. In this case, you can see here that the file is checked out because it's missing properties. So if I want to fix that, I can actually go ahead and select the file and edit its properties. So you'll see here the property that it's missing right now is related project. That's a required field. So if I were to go ahead and edit that, update the metadata, and save it, I can now go ahead and give it the appropriate information. You'll notice it no longer tells me that anything is missing. It simply says checked out. To check a file back in, simply choose one, or if there are many, the many that need to be checked in, and go ahead, and if you do the right-click menu, you'll choose more and check in. Remember, you can also just select the file and go to the ellipses up at the top, and check in is available here as well. If you'd like to add comments as to why changes were made or what changes were made as you're checking it back in, this is a good place to do it. So I'll go ahead and say updated required metadata. That way, if anyone's curious what changes were made, they now know. You'll notice that once a file is checked in, there's no icon. So there you go. Checking out and checking in a file are incredibly important facets of managing files here in SharePoint. Now, it's important to note one of the number one questions I get here is what would happen if somebody were to check out a file and then forget to check it back in? A site owner or site administrator can force check in a document. To force check in a document, they'll simply select the file, either go to the ellipses up at the top or go to the ellipses on the right, and they'll have two options: discard checkout or check in. Now remember, no changes are synced to SharePoint until you check a file back in. So if a site admin chooses discard checkout, it doesn't matter how many times you click save. It doesn't matter how long you've had it checked out. Discard checkout says get rid of all changes that were made prior to them checking it out. So if I've been working on this file for 30 days, they can kill all those changes using discard checkout. Check in, on the other hand, keeps all changes that may have been made while this file was checked out and checks it back in. So bear in mind that site owners and site admins have that flexibility to choose between the two. But nonetheless, they can force check in a document. And there you go. Go ahead and pause the video and try checking out a document for yourself. In fact, go ahead and make some changes. Check the version history to see that no matter how many changes you make while a file is checked out, it will not create new versions until you check it back in. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. So when it comes to working with document libraries, hopefully you're starting to see that there's a lot of similarities between lists and libraries, at least in terms of what tools are available. That said, the major difference between the two continues to be what kind of data they hold. Lists hold data directly, so they're generally information that you type directly into SharePoint. Libraries, on the other hand, hold files that hold that data. So you're talking about Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PDFs. Now, when we talk about document libraries, and of course about managing files, the question naturally, inevitably comes up, well, where do folders fit in? I'd like to be able to use folders. Now keep in mind, folders do exist inside of document libraries, and we do have the ability to put them to work. But it's important to know what they represent and how we can work with and without them. So folders were designed initially to organize things into single subject matter, which is to say that one file goes into one folder. Now that said, that's a pretty limiting concept. So keep in mind that custom metadata can help to organize files in a way that folders generally can't, by allowing you to assign multiple fields of information that help to organize, sort, and filter the content. Now, of course, that quick pep talk's not going to change your mind if you really need to use folders, or if you work for an organization that really needs folders. To create a new folder, simply find the New dropdown up at the top portion of the screen, and click Folder. Type the name of the folder, and click Create. Once a folder's been created, of course, clicking inside of it will take you in. And if it's empty, it'll tell you it's empty. To get back, you could use the back button, but remember, try to use some of the navigational hooks that are available in the actual SharePoint interface. So I can use the breadcrumb trail to get back to Central Documents. To add files to a library, you've got a couple of different options available. If it's just a handful, you can select them and then click and drag into the appropriate folder. You can also select a few of them and select Move To. Keep in mind that not only can move to other folders within a library, it can also allow you to move to other libraries if there are any available. In this case, I'll go ahead and move these to Q2. So you can see how easy it is to move all of these files into individualized folders if we need to. But that said, once again, note that folders are just one option that's available out of many to organize files. Go ahead and pause the video and create your own folders. And if you have a few files, move those files into folders. Just as a quick side note, if you do have a file that's in a folder and you'd like to move it up a level, simply drag and drop using the breadcrumb trail up at the top portion of the screen. And you'll notice that it brings it back. Go ahead and try that out, and we'll see after the break. Now, there's a chance that you have bought into the idea of metadata being a better organizational tool than folders. The problem is that you can't force somebody that you work with not to use folders. So how do you find a compromise between using folders and not using folders? It does seem pretty black and white. Fortunately, folders, like many other fields that we've talked about, is just another type of metadata, albeit a style of metadata that has its own visual cues, like a folder icon that you have to click into. That said, just like all other types of metadata, we can create custom views that filter that metadata out, so that all we're left with are the files. I'd like to show you how to do that now. So first things first, we're going to need to create a new view. We've already talked about this in a previous video, so we're going to glaze through a couple of the steps here. But keep in mind that if you want to follow up on the more in-depth parts of creating a view, you can check with our previous video. So first, I'm going to go ahead and jump up to the View dropdown, and I'm going to save this view. Now, I haven't made any changes to it just yet, but because of the new modern interface, not all the features that were available in the classic view are available just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save View. And I'm going to call this the flat view. I can choose whether or not to make it public or personal by following this check mark. In this case, I'll go ahead and leave it public because other people might want to use this view too. And I'll click Save. Now that I've created this new view, I'm going to go ahead and edit the current view. Editing the current view will take you into the more traditional view creation field. So it's here, of course, that I can use the check marks to select what metadata is visible. I can make it the default view if I want to. I can even change the name. Now, I mentioned that folders are just another type of metadata. So you might think, okay, well, then we just have to uncheck folders somewhere here, right? Well, you're not going to see anything really regarding folders except for maybe folder child count. But that's not what we're looking for. Instead, we're going to scroll down just a little bit further to one of the sections we didn't talk about in the previous video, the folders section. So I'm going to go ahead and expand the folders section. And it gives you two options, either show items inside folders or show all items without folders. Now, this isn't the world's greatest named tool because it might imply that it will only show you files that haven't been filed into folders. But that's not actually true. So check this out. I'm going to go ahead and select Show All Items Without Folders and click OK. And check it out. This is the flat view. All the files that were in those folders without the folders. If I go back to the All Documents view, the default view currently, you'll see those folders are all still there. I can still click inside of them to see just the files that are in there. But if I need to see all the files all at once, I now have a flat view which plucks them all out of their folders and presents them in a single list that I can now sort, filter, and create new views based on if I need to. Pretty cool. So to recap, we saved the view so that we could then edit the current view. We went to the folders section while modifying the view and said show all items without folders. And we clicked save. Go ahead and pause the video and try that for yourself.